On the Tigit website, I have an article called The 40 Best and Worst Motorbikes in Vietnam. It's a super old article, but still to this day at the top of Google and one of the most visited articles on the entire site. So I thought in this video I would go through a lot of the motorbike models that expats, foreigners are typically seen driving. These can be people who live here or people traveling. I'm not going to talk too much about the popular ones on the Vietnamese market, but the ones where your average foreigner comes here and they'll be driving it. So we're going to, roughly speaking, very roughly, go from cheap to expensive, which brings us straight to the bottom of the pile, which is Chinese motorbikes. So what is a Chinese motorbike? It doesn't actually mean it's made in China. It just means that it's made by a random company. For example, on the backpacker market, a Honda Win is pretty popular. There's loads of different brands of them. D-Tech being the most popular, which is actually, I believe, made in Vietnam. But the reason we call this a Chinese motorbike is because it's not Honda, it's D-Tech. Who is D-Tech? Okay, so usually these Chinese motorbikes cost between $500 and $700 brand new, and the locals use them in remote countryside for sort of farming-based work where they can very cheaply hack them along, keep them in operation. But if you are an expat driving pretty fast, pretty aggressively, these motorbikes tend to fall apart. So a Honda Win, Honda Wave, Honda Cub even, and a Honda 67, these can all fall into the Chinese category. Costing between $150, $350 on the second-hand market. It's very, very common if you're a new expat. You fly here, you have your nice young child, 5 years old or something. You have this dream of having a beautiful pink Honda Cub, very nice. But what you don't realize is that it's Chinese. In other words, it's never going to work. It also drives terribly, doesn't have brakes on it. So you've got this beautiful bike you've just bought and you can never, ever, ever get it working. That's pretty common here. Same story for the Honda 67, the classic, sexy bike that you want to drive to drink a beer in the evenings. You're never going to get it work. It's such an easy way for a dodgy dealer to get some money out of a new arrival expat when they come here. So Craigslist and stuff like that, you'll find these being sold to the unsuspecting new arrival in Vietnam. Anything on Chinese motorbikes you want to add, Sam?
Well, how can you tell the difference between Chinese motorbikes and the original? I know that Honda Cubs and Honda 67s go for quite a lot on the expat market. How can you determine what is real and what is fake Chinese?
So how can you separate a real one from a fake one? The truth is, through a test drive. The fake ones just drive really badly and they have no power. Real ones drive well. But from a paperwork standpoint, the blue card, this kind of thing, is actually really, really hard to know. I would say the main way to know is just the price, okay? A real Honda motorbike never drops really below $400. Every single Honda Win, fake. Every single Honda Cub, fake. Every single Honda 67, fake. So really what we're talking about here is trying to tell between a Honda semi-automatic, a Honda Wave, Chinese one and a real one. That's where your question marks come in. If someone tells you got a real one, nah, laughing, not possible. Okay, so let's move on to a bike called the SYM Excel Automatic. This is a really big, very cheap scooter, but it's so old. Now, everything I'm going to say here is a generalization, personal opinion. It's not fact at all, but basically SYM bikes are pretty low quality. And through the years, the SYM mechanics have sort of dropped off. Very few Vietnamese use SYM now, but you'll still find them driven by expats because they're so cheap. And if you get one that works, they're actually amazing bikes. So for the money, they can be great, but in general, they always have electrical problems. So I would avoid the SYM Excel. You probably pick one up for about $300, maybe $350 if you can find one. Suzuki GN 125. So this is a manual motorbike by Suzuki. It drives amazing if you can find one that works. It looks cool, sounds cool. It's actually one of my favorite motorbikes. But once again, everything inside these days is going to be Chinese parts. You can't buy original Suzuki GN parts anymore. So if you want to fix a bike, you fix it with Chinese stuff. So what you actually have is Chinese Suzuki GN 125s. So it's going to be a bottomless pit of maintenance and maintenance bills. It spirals very quickly. Okay, let's talk about the Yamaha Nouvo Automatic. Now this is the scooter that most expats will be seen driving. At least 5 years ago, almost every expat was on a Yamaha Nouvo 1, 2 and 3. They first came to Vietnam in 2003, the very first Yamaha Nouvo, which I understand was made in Japan. So it was an amazing scooter. And then you got the 2, 3 and 4, which basically were garbage. But it's taken many, many years from the amazing Yamaha Nouvo 1 for the market, including the Vietnamese market, to understand that the 2, 3 and 4 are terrible. I think it's probably about 10 years to figure this out. So they're very, very cheap. They're found, anywhere from $150 through to $400, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's even a Yamaha Nouvo 5, which flopped as far as I can tell. Maybe a 6, I'm not sure. But then because the Vietnamese caught up to how bad they are, Yamaha did a cheeky swap and they changed the name to Yamaha NVX. Now that you see on the market, driven by expats a lot. It's still a Nouvo, it's still crap, it looks big, it looks nice, it has I think it's a 155, so it's ticking all the boxes that an expat wants, but very unreliable, high maintenance machine. Every Vietnamese person I know that bought one very quickly got rid of it. I'm not sure what they cost these days. They're supposed to compete with the Honda SH, but it's pretty obvious these days, but it doesn't. Anyway, so you'll see expats driving around on the Yamaha NVX a lot. It's not necessarily a terrible bike, but it's certainly not a good one. And you got any comments on the Yamaha series of Nouvo's and the cheeky switch to the NVX?
The story I hear from most expat friends is, I'm only here for 6 months. I just want a bike to get me from my house to school every day, maybe 2 kilometers. What's the point in spending extra money on quality?
Okay. Yeah.
They don't see the value in a well done bike.
Maintenance bills. So we'll get onto the Hondas later, but with a Honda motorbike, you go into Honda with a problem and fixed. Bam. End of story. All these sort of cheap, let's say sub $700 bikes, you just go round and round and round and round in circles trying to fix it, and you never can. And the bills mount up quickly. They really do. And so it's definitely cheaper over time and safer just to get a Honda whatever, where Honda will service it. But we'll get to the Hondas in a minute. Yamaha, okay, again, this is generalizations. Let's take a quick break. Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, 3 big companies, right? What's the difference? Honda, they have service centers everywhere called Honda Head. You go into a Honda Head shop, more or less set prices, good mechanics, bike's fixed, boom, done. That's why we use Hondas in this company. Yamaha, they also have service centers everywhere, but a lot of them, from our experience, will overcharge you if you get the wrong one. Some of them are great. The mechanics are a lot more inconsistent. Basically, the service is much lower. And we found when we were operating Yamaha Exciters across the whole country that we were just having issues with Yamaha mechanics having no idea what they're doing. Now, Suzuki, their bikes are awesome, especially in terms of driving them. They're the most fun. Like if I had my own personal bike without a wife and kids, I would own a Suzuki. But they only have maybe 1 service center per city. There's only 1 in Ho Chi Minh, which is near the airport, 1 in Da Nang, and 1, I don't know how many in Hanoi. But also, again, the mechanics were questionable. So really, you just get a Honda if you want something that works. Right, so we're going to move on to the semi-automatic world, okay? So the truth is, if you're coming here and you want a quick runaround that's cheap, you want to get a real semi-automatic because they're so cheap to buy, really, really cheap and easy to maintain and fix. Whether you get a Yamaha Semi, a Honda Semi, or a Suzuki Semi, they're all going to be great options. But the Honda, of course, is still the best. But what I will say about the Yamaha options is the Yamaha Sirius, Yamaha Jupiter, all those sorts of things. They're cheaper than the Hondas, and they're also a little bit smaller and lighter. So for female expats, they can be a better choice. In my opinion, they're also slightly nicer to drive, softer suspension, but Hondas are pretty jittery and hard, but reliability, you go Honda. So Honda, you've got the Honda Wave, okay? And this is a whole mess of confusion in itself. You've got the Honda Wave Alpha, which is 100cc, very, very cheap. I think brand new, they're $700-800. So it's just Honda cutting all corners to try and compete with the cheaper competitors like Yamaha and SYM, and I think even Suzuki, but it's not a good bike. In fact, when I test drove a brand new Honda Alpha, I thought it was Chinese. That's how bad it was. But you go up to the Honda Wave RSX, bit more money, and now you got a nice bike, and they're all branded at 110cc, I think, these days. So what's the difference between a Wave RSX, a Honda Blade, Honda Dream, all this sort? Basically, they're the same bike, but with different bodywork. So the reason we choose a Blade, not a Wave, is A, to avoid the Chinese motorbike market confusion, but B, the bodywork of a Blade is lighter than a Wave, but underneath, same thing. The Dream, great bike, quite expensive. The seat is flat, much more comfortable. But basically, again, underneath, same thing. Honda Future, one of the most underrated bikes on the market, which expats should be buying. It's a Honda 125cc semi-automatic, very expensive. But if you're wanting a bike to travel long distance that's super reliable, this is a bike you could consider. Not enough expats own these, in my eyes.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I get is the problem with semi-automatics from expats is the trunk space. A lot of people opt for the automatics because they can fit their helmet under the seat. And then they've got the step through for shopping, for dogs, for anything.
Yeah, so if you're wanting a cheap runaround, really cheap runaround, you get a semi-automatic, but you're definitely losing the comforts of the under-seat space. Chains also, you need to oil and tighten the chain pretty regularly. So although the maintenance is very low, you have to do it more frequently than an automatic. Yeah, it's true. Let's talk about automatics. So what's out there? In my article, I promoted the Suzuki Hayate, which is my favorite automatic to date. Suzuki, I think, stopped making them in 2008, and we stopped doing them really because it's a 125cc carburetor automatic and it cuts out a lot. You're driving along. Apart from that, it's amazing, but people kept on blaming us and saying it was dangerous. Anyway, I still, and I think it's because of my article, I see the Suzuki Hayate being driven around the expat areas quite a bit. What I will say about these, great value for money, great bikes, but the maintenance is quite high, the fuel consumption extremely high. You also see the SYM Shark. This is a big SYM scooter. Again, I talked about SYM earlier. Very cheap, low quality, but it's a nice bike if you get one working. So that really brings us on to the Hondas. You've got the Honda Lead, the Honda Airblade, and the Honda Vision. So the Lead is like a big shopping cart of a bike. I have one for my family. It's massive under the seat space, but handles like a boat. The Honda Airblade, the most popular automatic in the country. Nearly every single household in this country will have an automatic somewhere in their Honda Airblade automatic somewhere in their house. It's just your A to B automatic scooter. And this really is what most expats should buy. You just can't go wrong with an Airblade, really. They cost roughly $800 to $1,000 secondhand. They started in 2008. And even if you buy one of the old 2008 ones, you pop into Honda, bam, it's fixed. That's how good they are. Honda Vision, the most underrated automatic on the expat market. They are amazing. So they were originally marketed towards the female expats. They got a flat foot platform, and they're cheaper than Airblades. It's the cheapest automatic Honda provide, actually, but basically it's the same bike as the Airblade underneath, just lighter, smaller, more nimble, better handling. Really great bike is the Honda Vision. Now these days the more modern bikes are 125cc or even 150cc. The older ones are 110cc. Does it really matter 110 versus 125 versus 150? No, it's absolutely irrelevant really to your everyday person.
In Vietnam, you don't need a license to ride 49cc and below.
Yes.
So we get a lot of questions to get around that. Why do we not have 49cc bikes?
So why do we not do 50cc bikes? It's true, 50cc bikes and below, you do not need a license. A true 50cc will not get up a hill. They are outrageously slow. So you can have one to potter around town and that is it. So how do you see them being sold or promoted to travelers? Well, what actually happens is the rental shop will upgrade the engine to 100 or 100, whatever they want really. But of course, if you had a major accident on one of these bikes, the police are going to straight away know this is not a 50cc bike and your insurance or whatever you thought you had is going to be invalidated. So a true 50cc is never going to get up a hill, not a chance. So if you're traveling, forget about it. As an expat living here and you want to potter around to shops and things, sure, go and rent or buy a 50cc bike. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's talk about some manuals. Manual motorbikes are actually relatively rare in Vietnam. Your only choice on the local market is a Honda Winner and a Yamaha Exciter in terms of like popular bikes. The Yamaha Exciter is super fun to drive, makes a cool noise, but again, Yamaha is not reliable as a Winner. A Winner is a lot more powerful than an Exciter, but it sort of feels and drives a bit like a scooter. But to sum up these two bikes, the Honda Winner is vastly better than the Exciter, but the Exciter is a lot more fun to drive than the Winner. Both bikes are great, and if you want some power around the city, then the manual is good. But apart from that, I don't really see a massive reason to buy one of these. They're not, you don't have under the seat space, they're not that convenient, they're not as comfortable as, say, a Honda XR for traveling. Why would you buy a Winner?
For me, I prefer manuals, and I guess some people like the idea of a short scooter that's a manual. Most of the people I know, they're too short or they're too scared of the XR, so they pick the Winner because they want manual, but not a tall dual sport bike.
Right. Makes sense.
Do you want to talk about the Suzuki Raider? Because you used to Tigit used to rent a Suzuki Raider.
Yeah, so the Suzuki Raider, once upon a time, it's a very small Suzuki 150cc manual motorbike competing with the Exciter and the Winner. And it was pretty awesome, and it looked and felt like a cool motorbike. But now, for some reason, Suzuki have changed all of the styling to become more and more and more like a scooter. So your problem was before, is the Exciter and the Winner both kind of looked like scooters, but then you had the Raider that looked like a pocket rocket motorbike. But then Suzuki made this looking like a scooter as well. So why would you buy a Raider over a Winner or an Exciter? So for me, that bike is finished. Suzuki killed its characteristics. I don't know why. What a shame. It used to be used for drag racing on the Vietnamese market, but not anymore. So now we got the Honda XR 150, very, very popular for tourism. It's our main manual motorbike, but also these days quite popular on the expat market to just get around town, drop your kids off at school. You can put a box on the back. It really is the bike that does absolutely everything. Jack of all trades is the old Honda XR. Downsides being it's got no guard for your shins, so even if you got like light moisture on the road, you get wet. You got no under the seat space, but you can fix that with a box. Maintenance is going to be higher than a normal scooter, but basically the XR is an absolute weapon of a motorbike. They'll allow you to drop your kids off and then do a holiday across the country to Hanoi. You drive an XR?
Jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yeah, that's a good bike. Vietnamese market, you tend to see the Yamaha WR 155 more than the XR. It's a bit more expensive than the XR. Seats less comfortable, but it's more dirt bike oriented. It's also a really nice bike. So yeah, these sorts of, they're not supported by Honda here. They're actually imported from overseas, both bikes, Honda XR and Yamaha WR, but they're both awesome choices and pretty easy to service because they're quite popular now.
I would say more expats go for the WR 155 and
really?
more Vietnamese go for the CRF 150.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but we didn't talk about CRF 150 either. These three bikes sort of go together, small differences in them. Let's talk about the big automatics. So we have the Honda PCX, we've got the Yamaha NVX, which we just talked about a bit earlier, and the Honda SH. So the Yamaha NVX is very popular among expats. It looks big, sounds powerful, but actually if you sit in the cockpit, it has very, very little room. It doesn't behave like a big bike. The Honda PCX, sort of similar-ish, it's more casual, gangster-looking bike, I think. But I felt surprised, I'm 6'5", 2 meters tall. I felt surprised by how small the cockpit was. Then you got the Honda SH, I think you got the 125 version, which is for women. That's the Honda SH mode. Then the big version for men, Honda SH. And it used to be like a really luxurious, fancy scooter, but now you just see it everywhere on the roads. And basically, it's the high-end, big automatic scooter. And I think more expats probably should be buying Honda SHs. You do see a lot of expats with them though. But it's a characterless bike. Like, it really is just a big set of wheels, I suppose. Like, it moves from A to B, and that's it. Like, it's not fun to drive. I've got a video on the SH.
I find the rider positioning's horrible.
On?
The SH and the PCX, it's all the same to me. It's a scooter style riding position, but it's quite a powerful engine compared to Airblades and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have that much power when you can't really control as well as a proper motorbike.
Yeah, it's true. I also got I have this problem with all scooters. I get my knees stuck under the handlebars, which is quite scary. Funnily enough, to get around this, my favorite bike is the Honda Vision. It's one of the smallest. The seating position allows me to sit back on the passenger part of the seat and stretch my legs out so I don't get them stuck. I'm a huge fan of the Honda Vision. It's just a great bike. Let's talk about dirt bikes for a moment. Now, dirt biking in Vietnam, most of the bikes are not sold here, so they are imported illegally. They do not have paperwork. This is normal. You're talking your CRF 250s, your Suzuki DRZs, any KTM off-road bike. Now, there is occasionally a unicorn of a bike that somehow is here with real paperwork, but it's extremely rare. 99% of the time, if someone is advertising real paperwork, it's still fake. And this is normal. And in my eyes, I've never seen an expat actually get a bike confiscated by the police. If you're going to buy a dirt bike, use it for dirt biking. Try and not be on the road too much. But like I say, there are unicorns out there. But in general, if you want to get back into the dirt biking scene, just buy an illegal bike like everybody else and be happy with it. But also these days, growing markets in Vietnam is big adventure bikes, which you can buy legally from BMW, from Honda, from Kawasaki, from any of, you've got KTM here, you've got Harley, all of the big brands are here, and you can go into their showrooms and buy a big motorbike. In particular, Honda CB500X, very popular, that's the bike we're doing. You see an awful lot of BMW GSs out there on the road with the Vietnamese these days. There's big Harley groups now. I understand Vietnam is one of the main markets for Harley at the moment, although I don't know anything about them, it's all here. So that scene is here. You pay a premium here because of tax for these big bikes, but it's something that you can do now.
Might be a little bit off topic, but would you ride a 1200cc? Do you have a limit personally to what cc is best for Vietnam? So
Vietnam is not a country that's set up for massive bikes. The roads here are narrow, twisty, mountain. Off-roading is either, well, you're either road or extreme off-road, maybe tarmac with potholes, but you don't really get the big open gravel stuff that is actually what ADV is defined as, Australian big open gravel road. That doesn't really exist here. So do you need a BMW GS in this country? In my eye, absolutely not. Way too much bike. I think you'd have an equal amount of fun on a XR 150 or something. CB500 even for most tourists is just way too big for them, to be honest. But if you're an experienced rider and you can handle these bikes like the back of your hand, then yeah, they're good fun and they work and they're comfortable, but you don't need one. I would actually argue the Kawasaki Versey 300 is one of the most underrated bikes on the market for Vietnam. It's a big ADV bike, but it's not actually big, it's small. And I think it would really fit this country, but very few people have it.
So why don't Tigit rent Kawasaki's?
Why don't we rent the Kawasaki Versey 300? Everyone wants a big number on the CC. If a 500cc and a 300cc cost the same amount of money, the customer's always going to want the 500. So we buy the 500, which is the better bike, the 300. But that's the way marketing works in the ADV world. Big number equals people want it, although it shouldn't be like that. I would choose a Versey 300 over a CB any day of the week, but business is business. Let's summarize this video. if you're an expat just arriving to Vietnam, you should understand that motorbikes don't actually cost 150 bucks here. If you want to get a motorbike that works, you need to be spending $800 or more. And if you have no idea about motorbikes, just save yourself the drama and get a Honda. Honda Vision, Honda Airblade, Honda Wave. It just makes your life much easier. Once you understand the different brands here and what's going on, you can venture into other motorbikes, but try and avoid the really cheap stuff like sub $500, or I would argue sub $800. You just end up in these little mechanic shops going round and round circles. The other big mistake that expats make is if you own a real bike, whether it's a Honda, a Yamaha or a Suzuki, just go to the official service centers. They're all good. They all fix the motorbike. You do not want to be using the little mechanic shops on the side of the road. These are designed primarily for Chinese motorbikes. There are exceptions, some of them specialize in certain areas, but they're not authentic OEM dealers. So don't use them unless you understand what it is they're doing. How about electric motorbikes? So yes, electric exists here, usually under VinFast. So if you're an eco-friendly warrior, which you should be, then you can get an electric bike here. The truth, or sad truth, is they're just not as good as the petrol ones at this time. I would say about 70 to 80% as good. You still got issues of having to charge them up. You got no under the seat space. They lack power. They don't go very fast. So in terms of putting an Airblade against an electric, the Airblade would win every time. But it's certainly viable these days to get an electric bike and to make it work at your inconvenience. So go and do it.